that actually God brings forth. It is as if a man who is hungry or a man who is thirsty imagines himself to eat something or to drink something and yet is still starving or is still dying of thirst because that spiritual food is not fulfilling. I mean, what is more important to you? Although we're in these flesh bodies, and certainly flesh bodies have needs and things that are necessary to keep them going, but ultimately they are temporary. Your spirit, your soul is forever, or at least you want it to be. So the question is, what's more important to you, your flesh body or your soul? Verse 13, I saw in the visions of my head upon my bed, and behold, a watcher, and an holy one came down from heaven. This would be an angel. The word watcher is a Chaldean name for an angelic being watching over the affairs of men. And it would be one individual, one angel. In verse 14, he cried aloud and said thus, hew down the tree, and cut off his branches, shake off his leaves, and scatter his fruit. Let the beasts get away from under it. I mean, they're not going to want anything to do with it when that happens. And the fowls from his branches. Verse 15, nevertheless, leave the stump of his roots in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass, in the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beast in the grass of the earth. So in other words, we're going to take the kingdom away from him, and historically, in the interpretation of this dream, we're going to find Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom would be taken away from him for a time, but we're going to take the kingdom away from him, and in the case of Nebuchadnezzar, at least, there's going to be the opportunity for him to get his kingdom back, which he would. And you might say that in the case of Satan, he had his kingdom taken away from him. There was a little bit, there was still one more roll. There's still one more time, still one more great, in his mind, if you will, great day that Satan will have to deceive the world and to have a kingdom again for a time. And then again, he'll lose it again for the second time, and then it'll be over for him, other than that time in which he'll be released for a short season, deceive many of the people again, and then finally be thrown into that lake of fire and consumed, turned to ashes from within, as again documented in the 28th chapter of Ezekiel. But here again, the angel says, cut down the tree, leave the stump, leave the stump, leave the roots. Verse 16, let his heart be changed from man's, and let a beast heart be given unto him, and let 7 times pass over him. This is something that historically would happen to Nebuchadnezzar, where he would lose his mind for a period of time. He would be afflicted with a disease or a mental illness called lycanthropy, which for those who like horror movies is kind of where we get the idea of a werewolf. He would, whether he considered himself to be a wolf or some type of animal. In history, Bollinger has here that it is historically documented that there was a period of time, several years passed in which Nebuchadnezzar apparently didn't do anything in the kingdom. So we have that historical, secular documentation, again, from our father's word, backing it up, that there was a time in which Nebuchadnezzar lost authority over his kingdom and did not rule over it. Verse 17, this matter is by the decree of the watchers, by the angels, and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent, this is why, that the living they may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and setteth up over it the basest of men. And so it is that, first of all, that the living, you might say those that are living, and that those who are spiritually living, which hopefully includes all of you, that understand that God is in control, that God rules over the affairs of men, that God sets up kingdoms, that tears down kingdoms, that he will put in place anyone he pleases, anyone who it suits him to rule over a nation for a time. Be that a good person or a bad person, he will put up the basest of men, the basest of entities, even Satan himself, to rule the world for a period of time. But that it is all in God's control, and that it all happens according to his plan, and never lose sight of that. So many people, again, get caught up because it just seems to be, with this election that we just have, the rallying cry of the day is beating back globalism and beating back the globalist. And that with the election of Donald Trump or whomever, we're going to beat the globalist, or we're going to get a reprieve from the globalist. Well, it is God who is in control. It is God who sets up, again, kingdoms. It is God who gives people the authority to rule. And even globalism, not that it's necessarily a good thing, but it suits, and certainly not in the hands of man, and definitely not in the hands of Satan, but it suits our Father's purposes as a part of his plan to allow it to happen, to allow it to come to pass, so that his children who are here on earth will be able to make a decision as to whether they will buy into that system and be deceived in that system, or whether they will stay true to him and keep their faith and their obedience in him and to him. It is a test for the people on this earth and in this world, right now and in the times to come. And so the idea that we somehow are going to keep it from coming to pass, or give ourselves a reprieve from it, I cannot personally rationalize that, in the Word of God. That is not something that I see as a possibility even. But anyway, verse 18. This dream, O King Nebuchadnezzar, this dream I, King Nebuchadnezzar, have seen. Now thou, O Belteshazzar, declare the interpretation thereof. Forasmuch as all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make known unto me the interpretation, of course they weren't, but thou art able, for the spirit of the holy gods is in thee. And at least he recognized in his own way why Daniel was able to interpret the dream for him. Verse 19, and we're going to get into the interpretation here. Verse 19, then Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, was astonished for 1 hour. And again, 1 hour, that should always, hopefully for many of you, ring a bell or draw your mind to the hour of temptation. And so it will be that during that time, the entire world, or most of the world, will be astonished, mesmerized, taken in by Satan. And even those that are not, you may say, will be astonished or amazed to a certain degree as to what is happening. Not completely, because they understand it, but to see that time come to pass, and to see most of the entire world, including, unfortunately, people that they know and love, being deceived by Satan, believing that he is Christ, believing that he is there to take care of them and to provide for them. And so that will be. But then Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, was astonied for 1 hour, and his thoughts troubled him. The king spake and said, Belteshazzar, let not the dream or the interpretation thereof trouble thee. Belteshazzar answered and said, My lord, the dream be to them that hate thee, and the interpretation thereof to thine enemies. In other words, this would not be good news for Nebuchadnezzar. 20. The tree that thou sawest, which grew and was strong, whose height reached unto the heaven, and the sight thereof to all the earth. Again, a worldwide kingdom, a worldwide ruler, a type for Antichrist. Verse 21, whose leaves were fair, and the fruit thereof much, and in it was meat for all, under which the beasts of the field dwelt, and upon whose branches the fowls of the heaven had their habitation. He's recalling back to Nebuchadnezzar what was just told to him, the details of the dream. 22, it is thou, O king, that art grown and become strong. For thy greatness is grown, and reaches unto heaven, and thy dominion to the end of the earth. He ruled over the entire known world at that time. And again, so too will, there's a couple different ways to analyze or to describe it. So too will Satan, so too will Antichrist rule over not only the entire known world, but actually, of course, literally the entire world. And he will rule until the end of this earth age, at which time the seventh trump sounds, at which time Christ returns, at which time that tree is hewn down, that tree of the knowledge of good and evil, if you will, which is a role that he played back then that he will not necessarily play again, but which was Satan, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And that tree will be cut down. That 10-toed kingdom of Daniel chapter 2 will be destroyed, and Christ's kingdom will be set up and will go into the millennium. Verse 23, and whereas the king saw a watcher and an holy one coming down from heaven and saying, hew the tree down and destroy it, yet leave the stump of the roots thereof in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass, in the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts of the field, till 7 times pass over him. Now, historically, some would say that this was 7 years that this occurred to Nebuchadnezzar. Some would say that it was not. We know that there are 7 dispensations, or even 8 dispensations in this world, biblically speaking, or in God's eyes. 7 dispensations. The 7th dispensation ends this world age. Actually, the 7th dispensation gets us through Judgment Day. And then the 8th dispensation is the eternity for those that participate in it, that make it. We'll leave it off there, and we'll get into the interpretation. We've already got into the bulk of the interpretation, that the tree was Nebuchadnezzar. Also, the tree is Antichrist, Satan. But we'll continue the interpretation in the next lecture, get into, no doubt, the end of this 4th chapter, probably get into the 5th chapter, perhaps anyway. We've only got about 13, 14, 15 more verses here. Everyone have a great day. You've been listening to American Faith Today. Thank you, and God bless.
1, 2, 3, 4. I gave you all I had to give, and I done the best I can. So now it's up to you to finish what I began. Yes, I will always love you, and I'll be there just for you.